Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Leon Vainstein speaking from Los Angeles, California. Of course, it's simply impossible to believe that the Democrats were taking a portion of the money made from selling children. But from Kennedy's testimony and from the documents uncovered by Congress, this disgusting picture is exactly what emerges.
The main reason why the Biden administration lost
track
of all these children was that they prioritized speed over safety, and there were political reasons for that. They wanted to get the children out from under United States custody as quickly as possible, so they handed them over to just anyone. No background check or even identification was required. I saw terrible stories about how the same person would take child after child using different names and different addresses. One of the addresses was a strip club. One of the addresses was a parking lot. One of the addresses was a vacant lot filled with shipping containers.
Children were handed over to whoever requested them without any checks. No one, this person, no one, what connection they have to the child, not the address. Nothing was checked. At first they thought it was 85,000, then 150, and then they found out that the child was already taken. In this way, 300,000 children were taken, given away, sold. 300,000 children. This is in America in the 21st
century. This person received all these children alone. One person received 42 children at one address each. Now we are conducting DNA testing for each sponsor, verifying their identity, conducting a background check, and checking their income. Thank you, Mr. Minister.
One person was given more than 40 children. Who is he or she? Why does this person need so many children? Where are they now? What was done to them? Are they still alive? Who could have covered this up? It's impossible without protection. At the same time, forcing thousands of federal employees to commit official crimes and covering up a vast network of child trafficking and exploitation. Who could it be?
One of the suspicious activity reports sent by an American bank to the Treasury Department links Hunter Biden and his business partners to international human trafficking, as well as other illegal activities. Money received from foreign individuals in the same premises where Joe Biden was present was increasingly spent on promoting illegal activities. The suspicious activity report indicated that Hunter Biden was conducting business with individuals suspected of human trafficking.
Here at the port, someone heard screams and banging coming from inside a container.
They say they heard children screaming inside the cargo containers.
The trailers with a body outside and several people they could see inside were at the door. When we arrived at the scene, there were 35 people in the container, so 35 people don't just end up in a container for no reason.
So we sent patients to pick up the container. The police report that they found 39 bodies inside the cargo container.
Court documents give us a clearer picture of what exactly was happening in those cargo containers.
We hope that those responsible for placing these people in such inhumane conditions will be held accountable to the fullest extent of the law.
But Hunter himself couldn't have done that. Here it would have to be either his dad or, in the worst case, his mom. These bodies were discovered during Biden's administration. You heard about this in the press. Why was the press silent? Because propaganda got into their heads. That, no matter what happens, it's still better than letting the Republicans come to power. Whatever happens, it's better than that. Because if the Democrats sold 300,000 children, then the Republicans would sell 3 million. And not just some Latino kids, but our own, our white kids, our black kids, and they'll establish fascism. Because a yellow devil means a yellow devil, and don't confuse it with a green one. He's worse than anything that could ever exist in the world. He's worse than Hitler, worse than Genghis Khan, worse than Zmay Gorinish. And the Democrats, whether they never make mistakes or sometimes do, put a senile president in the White House, run away from Afghanistan, and sell the country to China. So are they really much better than what would happen if this monster became the 47th? This narcissistic, self-obsessed mistake and an enemy. Although in his first term he didn't really do anything terrible. But if, God forbid, it happens, it will be worse than anything that could have been. They also use children renting them.
Smugglers are now more active than ever, advertising ways to get into this country with a child. We've uncovered so-called child recycling schemes, if you can believe it, over the past couple of months. That's when smugglers kidnap a child and hand them over to an adult so that person can cross the border and claim to be family. When they get inside, since, as you know, we can only detain families for 20 days, the child is sent back and brought again with another family, another fake family, another adult. It's clear, criminals play a huge role. We are working to stop the activities of all transnational criminals, gangs, smuggling, and human trafficking. I can't make it any clearer, and I think the president can't either. He will take every possible action within his authority to stop this flow.
The Biden administration quietly handed children over to known pedophiles. Simply to those who were officially known. We have a list of people you can look up, and right there you can see them, pedophiles and rapists, handed over directly with a kind democratic smile. Several times they brought a cage with children, but it was hushed up. In addition to legal import, they also brought them in containers from underdeveloped countries. They would send them, pack 20 or 30 into a container, and send them here. When these containers arrived, someone would separate them, take them somewhere, and take out the surviving children from there, and then take them somewhere else. That's what they said about fucks back in 2023. My question...
Will the Biden administration ever start talking about this? Because I believe Americans deserve to hear all of this directly from the president. About all these scandals and crises that are just piling up on them one after another?
They really deserve these answers. And it is with this baggage that Joe Biden will have to go into the election, since he has just announced his participation in the presidential race again. It's terrible. It's just a nightmare. The word nightmare is even too mild to describe what happened to these children at the hands of cartel members, at the hands of traffickers, of people. What they have to go through to get to this country, and what happens to them when they're literally just dumped on the side of the United States and then handed over through these nonprofit NGOs to people who wouldn't pass a regular background check, like the ones done for standard foster families and child protective services. I believe the states need to step in, take control of these children, and really make sure that for these nearly 750,000 children who have been placed in our country, we fulfill our humanitarian duty, take care of them, and make sure they are not subjected to abuse and exploitation.
Complete silence from the liberal press. How did our liberals, progressives, socialists, and other Democrats become so degenerate? They've gone so far as to justify the slave trade. They've gone so far as to justify the slave trade. And here comes the talking body of our 46th. On the day he announced that he was running for election, for re-election, that he was running for election and would win. Do you remember what happened to him, yeah? Did he win or not? Somehow I suddenly forgot.
Which is represented by the Republicans. Make America great again. This attempt to take us somewhere we've never been before. They would rather have children and the elderly struggle with food and people lose their medical care. It's the same old trickle-down principle, just dressed up differently. Make America great again, only even worse.
Terrible. Those Republicans are just awful. Just terrible. Just make America great again, Republicans. I mean, terrible. Terrible. It's scary. It's a nightmare. Yes, we traffic children. Yes, we sell out our homeland. Yes, but at least we talk about it very nicely, kindly, and tearfully. Yes, and maybe some of the children were delivered to the Oval Office. After all, Joe clearly had an issue about this. There was clearly something wrong with him about this.
Joe Biden's cognitive and physical decline has been well documented throughout his administration. His slurred speech and awkward movements often make headlines and become the subject of mockery on primetime shows. But Joe Biden's strange behavior is not talked about as often. Sniffing children, inappropriate touches, and strange whispers have repeatedly become topics of discussion during his presidency. However, mainstream media seem to be keeping quiet about it.
Disturbing behavior.
Stars Rita Panahi, Paul Murray, and James Morrow reveal the creepiest moments of Joe Biden. Of America are
President.
Joe Biden claims that America's children are all our children. But he has repeatedly gone too far with this statement, behaving very strangely when interacting with children. Perhaps the strangest display of Joe Biden's disturbing behavior is smelling children's hair and getting face to face with them. Here are just a few such moments.
Yeah, you're doing great. Let me whisper some doubt to you. Look, don't tell your mom what I told you.
Yeah, I don't even know what to say about that. This person sniffs children way too often.
There are moments when he gently fixes a young girl's hair and whispers in her ear, and then fixes her hair again. There's nothing perverted about it. The vice president knows he's being filmed at these swearing-in ceremonies, and the parents are standing right next to him when he leans in for a kiss.
That's in front of people. But what was he doing with the kids when no one was around? Or was it only his faithful life partner, Dr. Jill Biden? Or maybe it's a shared hobby of theirs.
Our old friend, Swampy Joe, also known as Creepy Joe Biden, was forced to apologize when he was trying to become the Democratic candidate for kissing too many people. Hair, he sniffed their hair constantly, behaved a bit strangely. You've probably seen it over and over again. Very awkward. Thank you, sir. Stay away from me. It used to be a joke, but then he's not Donald Trump, so we have to pretend it never happened. Now, it doesn't matter because he can do whatever he wants, including destroying the American economy. You know, that's what happens. They'll keep applauding him anyway. And guess who's become Creepy President Joe again?
The word creepy, as everyone called Biden Creepy Joe, translates into Russian as Scary Joe or Shady Joe. Well, basically the United States president who gives an unpleasant, sinister, disgusting feeling. That was his nickname.
Oh no, he did it again. Oh no, he did it again.
Well, that's very important. I told my daughter and granddaughters,
no serious boyfriends until you're 30. Well, all right. No serious boyfriends until you're 30.
At least remember that.
Yeah, that's not creepy at all, right?
Invading a young girl's personal space and telling her not to have any boyfriends until she's 30.
I would still have him locked up. Even if he lost his memory and his mind, along with his wife and son. And here is the witness's account. At that moment, she knew about 85,000, not about 300,000 missing children.
My goal is to inspire action to protect the lives of migrant children, including the staggering 85,000 who are missing. Today, children will work night shifts at slaughterhouses, factories, and restaurants to pay off debts to smugglers and human traffickers. Today, children will be sold for sexual exploitation. Today, children will call hotlines to report that they are being beaten, neglected, abused, or sold into slavery. And we don't know if they will get the help they need. For nearly a decade, unaccompanied children have suffered in the shadows, and I must admit that I knew nothing about their suffering. Until 2021, when I volunteered to help the Biden administration deal with the crisis at the southern border. As part of Operation Artemis, I was sent to the emergency intake site at Pomona Fairplex in California to help the Department of Health and Human Services, the Office of Refugee Resettlement, reunite children with sponsors in the United States. I thought I would be helping to place children with loving families. Instead, I found out that children are being moved through a complex network that starts with recruitment in their home country, smuggling into the United States at the border, and ends with the Office of Refugee Resettlement handing the child over to a sponsor. Some sponsors are criminals and human traffickers, as well as members of transnational criminal organizations.
I want you to hear again and again what I have already said. This is not a figment of my imagination, not a rumor, not a conspiracy theory. This is the reality of America under Hillary, under Biden, under Obama, under Kamala Harris, under prosecutors paid by Soros, under bought judges.
Some sponsors see children as commodities and assets that can be used to make money. That's exactly why we're seeing an explosive increase in labor exploitation. Now, whether intentional or not, it can be argued that the United States government has become a middleman in a large-scale, multi-billion-dollar child trafficking operation carried out by criminals seeking to profit from children's lives. As for me, I'm concerned about the safety of children. I don't see this as a political issue. I see it as a humanitarian problem. I assure you, my motives are pure and noble. I want children to be protected.
Draw your own conclusions. The Democrats let in at least 300,000 children and handed them over to the cartels, while the Republicans didn't let in a single one. Is there
a difference? Well,
in the numbers, in quality and quantity, or do you still not notice it?
That's why I want to tell you about what I personally saw at the fair in Fomon. I saw vulnerable indigenous children from Guatemala who speak Mayan dialects and can't speak Spanish. That means they can't ask for help in English and they can't ask for help in Spanish. They become prisoners of their sponsors. I sat with case managers as they cried, telling me about the horrors, about what happened to the children during their journey to this country. I saw apartment buildings where 20, 30, even 40 unaccompanied minors were released without any supervision. I saw sponsors who tried to take children from several Office of Refugee Resettlement Centers into their care at the same time. I saw sponsors using multiple addresses to gain custody of children. And I saw numerous cases of debt bondage among children, where a child knew they had to stay with the sponsor until the debt was paid off. The realization that we are not offering children the American dream, but instead placing them into modern-day slavery with cruel overseers was a terrible revelation, a terrible revelation. These children back are a captured, vulnerable group of victims who have no access to law enforcement and no knowledge of their rights. They are blackmailed, exploited, and neglected. And that's exactly why I became a whistleblower. In 2021, I personally witnessed the horrors of child trafficking and exploitation. My life will never be the same after what I saw, but I have hope because I'm counting on you. I hope that you will take action to end this crisis and protect the lives of these vulnerable children.
And not a single Democrat did anything to stop the sale or transfer of children to pedophiles and said nothing to the press. They all just ignored this, as well as anti-Semitism, arson, riots, and the killing of police officers. They always kept to themselves, and it looks like they always will. They just wanted to stay at the trough, that's all they wanted. And that's all. That's why they went into politics, that's why they went into power. At the NATO summit press conference, which by the way was incredibly successful, since most NATO member countries agreed to double their military investments, bringing them up to 5%, well, except for Spain. That's true, so our esteemed Donald Fredovich, he said, "It's nothing. We'll make them such an import agreement that they'll pay for everything." That is like a miser pays twice or even 3 times. And Europe's defense capability will increase many times over thanks to the President of the United States. And now to the question from the Austrian woman. Oh no, it was an Austrian man. Yes, an Austrian man, about why there is still no peace in Ukraine.
Please go ahead. Yes, you in the back, you're tall.
The tall man. Mr. President Johannes Peterer, Austrian National Television, how are you? You once said that you would end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours. Later, you said that it was said sarcastically. Of course, that was sarcasm. But you have already been in office for 5 months and 5 days. Why haven't you managed to end the war in Ukraine?
Because it's much more complicated than people can even imagine. Vladimir Putin turned out to be a more complicated opponent. To be honest, I had some issues with Zelensky. Maybe you've read about it. And it turned out to be more difficult than other wars. Listen, we just finished a war in 12 days that had been smoldering for 30 years, to be honest. We ended the conflict in Rwanda and Congo. They are going to come to sign the documents. We've already signed the main documents, but I think they will come to the White House on Friday. We finished. Serbia was about to start a war, but maybe the most important thing of all is India and Pakistan. And it wasn't about whether they would ever get nuclear warheads like we discussed in the Middle East, like we talk about Israel and Iran. They already have nuclear weapons. I stopped it with a series of phone calls about trade issues. I said, listen, if you're going to fight each other, things were getting really bad. You know how terrible the last attack was. It was really bad. If you're going to fight each other, there won't be any trade deal. No, you have to make a trade deal. I said, we are not going to make any trade deal. And actually, I had a general in my office last week who really made an impression, a general from Pakistan. You know, Prime Minister Modi is my good friend. He's a wonderful person. He's a great man. And I made them think and said, we're not going to make a trade deal if you keep fighting each other. And you know what? They said, no, we want to make a trade deal to stop a nuclear war.
Go on. Journalists, the press, and political opponents focus on what hasn't been done yet. And Trump very calmly explained to them that they missed several important events. A ceasefire between Iran and Israel, a ceasefire between Rwanda and Congo, Pakistan and India, for which Pakistan has already nominated Trump for the Nobel Prize. I hope so. By the way, Israel and Iran jointly nominated Trump for a second one. Trump, which is good, which is great, that Trump achieved this mainly with economic weapons. But except for the raid on Iranian nuclear facilities, weapons were not used. The raid was not against the government or the army, but to take away from the Iranians the ability to destroy our planet. Ladies and gentlemen, Liu York's Brendel has nothing to do with Brandy. He went crazy, lost his mind, went insane. One of the main news stories in the country was about the so-called primaries. In the Democratic Party primaries for the nomination for mayor of New York, it wasn't the former governor, Andrew Cuomo, who had always been leading, who won. You know, the very same one who caused the deaths of more than 30,000 elderly people during coronavirus disease. By the way, caused the deaths is a very accurate word, which is why so many liberals and progressives love him. And the winner was a Muslim communist from Uganda who recently became an American citizen named Zakran Mamdani, a rising star of the Democratic Party.
So this morning, you are with us. What do New Yorkers think? What are their thoughts?
I think that we often blame the people who live in the city too quickly when something like this happens. We say this phrase, well, you get what you voted for.
You vote for.
I think that the people we see on the streets of New York, those who have lived in this city for many years and have seen its decline, they didn't vote for him. So who voted for him? Young people and those who see that Donald Trump is doing everything right. When it comes to bringing order to our immigration system and saying, we are here illegally, we know that people are here illegally. That's why we will vote for someone who will protect all the illegals and bring him to power.
The vote of a Muslim, I think.
I think you're absolutely right about that.
The Muslims' vote went to this guy.
So what's the conclusion for the country? If I were in the Republican Party and saw this result, I'd be rubbing my hands together because this could be a sign of big changes ahead. When will we win? Will Republicans have to face a Democrat who will be elected in many districts in 2026? And if the Democratic Party has gone so far to the left, the Republicans will just sweep them away. Nevertheless, you and I already talked about this before the broadcast.
He won in New York.
He's a Democrat in New York. Most likely he'll be the next mayor, for sure.
Yes, that's right. If New York doesn't wake up, it'll get the most extreme mayor, a communist, an Islamist, a fascist, take from everyone to redistribute, set up state-run stores like in the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Basically, yes, pay the poor just because they're poor, and take more and more from the bloodsuckers.
I will be your candidate from the Democratic Party, Maine, New York.
Today, 8 months after the start of this campaign.
Well, with the introduction of a city where every New Yorker can afford to live. Here.
Exactly.
We won!
Wow.
We won. We did.
We won, from Harlem to Bay Ridge.
A city where anyone can afford to live. So it looks like homeowners will be forced to rent out apartments at prices set by the mayor, which, as always, leads to decline, neglect, lawsuits, a general drop in property values, the seizure of property from owners, and the transfer of property into the hands of the state. In other words, nationalization. This means price controls in stores, which will immediately lead to goods disappearing from the shelves. This means payment. Let's say a small one, but to everyone who can prove that they are poor, who can prove that they are unfortunate. What does it mean to stop looking for jobs for tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands? And, by the way, the homeless from all over the country will come. It means the end of a great city that simply won't be able to exist. Even under de Blasio, somehow they fell left, people ran away from there. Businesses were closing, but still, somehow. But with this, it will all just end.
In the fight for those who work at night to be able to enjoy the fruits of their labor during the day, where hard work is rewarded with a stable life, where 8 hours at the factory or behind the wheel of a taxi is enough to pay the mortgage.
Beautiful words, but they mean nothing. He will demand higher wages at private companies, and if they don't raise them, the city will impose huge taxes on them. That means businesses will flee New York, that's for sure, yes. Or he will raise the salaries of municipal workers several times over, but where will he get the money? Well, the only place to get the money is to tax private businesses to squeeze them. But Marx, well, I can say that they would also run away naturally. Or maybe he'll force people to sell apartments for a quarter of the price. How is that even possible? Or he'll make banks give out mortgage loans with zero interest, absolutely nothing, or maybe even with negative interest. Take out a loan from us and we'll pay you for it. So if he's just talking nonsense, then he's just a typical commie, a Democrat, a liar, and so on. And if he's serious, then the city will get exactly what it deserves if it chooses this jerk. Sorry, I'm skipping a couple of letters and still as their mayor. Because there's no other way to put it except with that word. You can't call him anything else. And those jerks who are shouting with joy because they got lucky, because they got something for free, that's what they want. They don't remember the law of conservation of energy. They skipped it in school. They didn't go when it was taught, So the law says you can't make something out of nothing. No thing. If you get something, something will be taken from you somewhere else. But have they ever thought about what makes North Korea different, say, from East Germany, from West Germany, or Venezuela before the socialists and after they took over? Maybe New Yorkers are so dumb that they never think about this at all, or maybe they never think about anything at all. That's possible too.
That's life.
You have to keep running all the time, making money, carrying things, smiling, or, on the contrary, getting angry, shouting. Basically, you always have to be doing something, and there's just no time to think. Like the Ukrainians who shout every day that Trump is an idiot and a scoundrel, while at the same time begging him for help. And the main thing is, knowing that he's the only person in the world who can help them, there's no one else. But they just can't help but bite. Well, because, like in that joke, yeah, I'm a snake, I can't do anything about it. It's the same with the residents of the great city of New York. I'll put it this way, goat's milk from a goat. Hey, I came up with a new proverb. Let them even turn their own into a dumpster.
City, that's
their business. So what happens in Ukraine is the business of Ukrainians. What happens in Iran is the business of Iranians. What happens in New York is the business of New Yorkers, for the most part. Of course, unfortunately, it affects all of us as well. Because from this city, like from a blast furnace, it spreads all over the country. Yeah, Zakharan also said that Trump is a fascist, that he's Zakharan. When he becomes mayor, he'll fire the New York police, which, so to speak, will immediately make New York even more suitable for life. And then, with the money saved, he'll help both legal and illegal immigrants live. That's how it is, ladies and gentlemen. That's how New York Democrats, with cries of delight, you saw it, I showed you, want to see a communist as their city's mayor. I think they just got jealous of London, which has had a Muslim mayor for a long time, while New York hasn't yet, and decided to get ahead. Not just a Muslim, but also a red one. Also someone who wasn't born in England or the United States and who loves to divide and rule. And here is such an opportunity. A person came from Uganda, where there is a lot of freedom and democracy, and wants to build something like Ugandaland here in America. She was terribly happy that supposedly the United States failed to bomb Iran's nuclear program, and Iran, they were just thrilled about it. We'll be able to recreate the atomic bomb and destroy Israel and the United States of America just like...
This timeline, according to which Iran is just a few weeks away from creating a nuclear bomb, directly contradicts the reports. According to United States intelligence estimates, Iran is 3 years away from being able to create a nuclear weapon if it chooses to do so. The facts about Iran obtaining nuclear weapons do not support the claim underlying it. They have only delayed the Iranian nuclear program by a few months. We need to call things by their proper names.
This is serious. Well, now he's trying to cover himself after it became known that both American and Israeli intelligence refute this report, and even the International Atomic Energy Agency says the report is simply inaccurate. And to top it all off, now the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, the head of the intelligence community, has just clarified the situation by releasing new intelligence that confirms what the president has stated many times. Iran's nuclear facilities have indeed been destroyed. If the Iranians decide to rebuild them, they will have to completely reconstruct all 3 sites, Natanz, Fordow, and Isfahan, which will likely take years. And before we continue, why were you so happy to report that the attack had failed? Because the destruction of Iran's nuclear program hurts the most.
Who? Obviously.
It obviously hurts Iran the most, but in second place, Barack Hussein Obama. This erases another part of Obama's legacy. The nuclear deal he made with Iran, which he supported for years, almost decades. Trump not only destroyed Iran's nuclear program, he wiped out a huge part of Obama and Biden's foreign policy.
And also, Kerry married his daughter to the son of Iran's foreign minister. And he flew there as if it was his own home and was conducting some completely illegal negotiations about something.
Just to make a note of this moment.
All right, Aaron.
Burnett is not the most trustworthy person here. Look at what she did a few days ago. She went on air and tried to convince the audience that the Iranian slogan, "Death to America," is actually peaceful and not a call for violence. Yes, death to America, but that's not violence. It's peaceful. Look.
But the question is whether calm will remain if the regime which still wishes death to America and death to Israel stays in power. And that's part of the discussion, right?
Yes, that's definitely part of the discussion. And you know, I remember, Dana, how once many years ago I was in Tehran and people around me were chanting death to America, even when I said that I was American, that I work for, and they gladly talked to me. So these two things, kind of sharp contrast between these outbursts, and nevertheless, the friendliness have always existed. Together.
Went crazy in their hatred. People shout, "Death to America," and then politely, as we've been told, I've heard it explained twice now, they treat you politely knowing that you're American. This shows that they don't actually mean death to America, but rather, on the contrary, they mean, yes, long live America. Do you think so too?
So, this report, this Defense Intelligence Agency report that we keep hearing about, first of all, it's top secret. Secondly, no one without top secret clearance has even seen the report itself. And the fact that they publish a screenshot with a fragment of just 2 sentences from the report makes me pretty confident, at the very least, that they're simply mistaken. The whole story they're pushing is wrong. Forda was not destroyed. Let me show you why. Well, the satellite images, as I was told, are the very same photos that were published within a few hours after the RB-2 dropped those 12 bunker buster bombs. And that's why it's important, like how Israel came back and bombed the site again. By the way, they showed and commented on those photos themselves. Look at what they themselves reported in the hours after the events, and then I'll explain why this is so important.
Take a look. This is what the fuel enrichment facility looked like from a satellite. Now take a look at what happened here. Every single thing you see here has actually changed a little bit. When you look at this slide from June 20th, pay attention to the objects here and here. Now look, this is no longer here. This is also no longer here. Things like this happen. And here's something really interesting. Look, this is the same auxiliary building we showed earlier. Everything looks intact.
These are the entrances to the tunnels. Now let's take a look.
If you look here, you'll see that these tunnel entrances have been damaged beyond recognition. Look.
At this, we'll be using the same photos that were reported by Sam himself. These bunker buster bombs were dropped here. Unlike regular bombs that explode on impact, these penetrate the ground. That's why they're called high-powered penetrating munitions. They go hundreds of feet underground and then explode. That's exactly what they're designed for. So take a close look at these photos. What do we see?
Pay attention to the red arrows and the craters in the ground.
The ground. These are entrances to Forda, which are located hundreds of feet from the impact sites, entrances after the strikes. Look at the photo after the strikes. You can see they're gone. The entrances disappeared, they collapsed. That means the bombs were dropped here, penetrated hundreds of feet underground, exploded, and were able to collapse the tunnel entrances right here, hundreds of feet away. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand that this facility is no longer usable. So, as far as I understand, that's why Trump was so confident in saying that Fordow has been obliterated.
In conclusion, you look at the candidates for mayor of New York, at the members of Congress from the Democratic Party, and the thought comes to mind, they hate us even more than those who shout death to America 5 times a day. Those people who shout between the shouts, they smile, they even smile at us and ask about our health. They don't hate each of us personally, it's just that they've been told that America is the devil and that they should hate it. That's why they hate it 5 times a day. But those from there and others like them hate both America and each of us, and they clearly wish us harm. They just don't understand that when a bomb goes off, it doesn't care whether someone is a Democrat or a Republican. But it's quite possible that they're willing to die just to make things bad for us. All right, ladies and gentlemen, give a like and subscribe. And don't forget, for sponsors, it's $4 a month, and if you subscribe for a year, it comes out to just $3 a month. There's a separate program where we'll have special meetings and shows just for those people who support us. So we'll try to do something nice for you because you've done something helpful for us. Okay, until next time, ladies and gentlemen, and I think there will be great news again.